Yorkshire is often thought of as the cradle of contemporary sculpture, and that's because Henry Moore was born here, Barbara Hepworth was born here, and Kenneth Armitage. Henry Moore often used to think there was something special about the people of Yorkshire which has contributed to this, this great centre for sculpture. He talked about the coal mine industry, he talked about the manufacturing base, and there may well be something in that, but what is interesting for both Hepworth and Moore is the integration of industry with the landscape. There's no sort of separation of the two, and I think that has actually contributed to these two great artists, and in particular Henry Moore. But also when you look at the sculptures are landscapes in themselves, and you can see the way he's pitted the surfaces. Some surfaces are very smooth, some are beautifully textured, but they reflect the landscape, they reflect the organic nature of where we are, and that's what the work is all about, and that's why this place is one of the best places in the world to actually see Henry Moore. He transformed the whole way we perceive sculpture in this country. He transformed the whole way we think about sculpture. He was the first international sculptor we had, and that had a major influence. This exhibition, Back to a Land, is very, very different to every other Henry Moore exhibition that's ever been put together. The title works at so many different levels. I mean, it's Henry Moore coming back to Yorkshire, the landscape which he loved and was brought up in and had the initial influence. It also works in so many different ways. You've got this formal setting, you've got the wild openness of the country park. But the biggest part of the exhibition is indoors. And indoors you will see the little maquettes, you'll see the drawings, you'll see Stonehenge. You'll see Moore's concern with the English landscape in general. You'll see Moore's concern with poetry about landscape and the way that influenced his work, the way the poetry actually resulted in drawings. So the combination of all these things coming together creates a refreshing new look at Henry Moore.
The Yorkshire Sculpture Park has found a photograph of a visit that I made with my father and my son. And I remember it vividly. I remember it vividly because it seemed to me to be the start of the Yorkshire Sculpture Park. My father said that actually of all the arts, sculpture was the hardest. And maybe he meant the hardest to appreciate, the hardest to make. And he said about sculptural form, for instance, it's the vocabulary of mankind. It was a great privilege to be his daughter because it meant that every day of my life I was exposed to what it is to see the world in a way through his eyes. And as a sculptor, he was most interested in three-dimensional form and the interpretation of three-dimensional form. So every day we were thinking about, or he was talking about, things like spatial difference, form and shape and shadow and light. And as a child, many of the games that we played, I mean, there were games that my father produced a pair of bathroom scales, and all my little guests had to stand on the scales and he would guess their weight. And he could guess their weight within, 2 or 3 pounds. But what this really demonstrates is that he knew the weight, the density of a piece of stone or a piece of wood, or it demonstrates a sculptural relationship with the world. Some of the things in the room that I've curated, for instance, there's an African mask, there's an African bowl, there are other items which remind me or make me imagine him discussing them in terms of shape and form and realization of shape and form. I think this exhibition manages to make connections between external sort of land and internal land forces in a really interesting way. It juxtaposes works on paper with the sculpture so that you start to discover things that possibly other exhibitions had not illuminated.